Thank you for those really interesting and provocative and stimulating talks. My question's for Noomi about something you raised in your talk, and I would really be interested in your opinion on this. You know, as in your own study in the UK, we're doing the same kind of thing. The 100,000 Genomes Project, for example, is one where we're mapping the genomes of 100,000 people. When the then Prime Minister launched the project, David Cameron, he, amongst other things, he said this was a great opportunity for UK PLC. Okay? So the point I'm making here, it goes back to what you said about the use of language when you talk about the resources that genomics research is dealing with. You said, you admitted to a sort of conflict about talking about this as a gold mine. The fact is that we do lack a language other than the language of economics to talk about these resources. And I do think, I mean, and this is why I'm putting it back to you, because you're a scientist working in that community. Is there a different language that can be used to describe the richness and importance of this research material other than the language of economics? Because I think it's debasing the discussion around what these resources are. I mean, I'm not the only bioethicist to raise this issue, but seeing as you raised it, I would put the question back to you. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, hard question. Yes, I think it's a good question. What I was thinking about that when we worked with this data, in a way that, as a scientific perspective, this will always be a good opportunity, but engaging individuals, but using a different language, I think it's hard to. Because as a researcher, it always comes to how much you publish. If we're gonna get money for the research, it really depends on getting things out there. So, and yeah, so I think I also, if I go to the political way, I think governments have to decide on what to do, what to use it for, because in a way, the Faroese government has decided, oh, we want to have this project, but actually they don't really, there's a lack of really engaging what you want to use it for, because it always comes on to cost. Should we, the Faroe project is all about competence building here in the Faroe Islands. But we always come to, if we just want data, we can send everything to China to be sequenced. It's much cheaper. So what is it about? Is it about getting knowledge, getting the information to, you know, for the greater good, or is it to leave something here to for the community, to have jobs? And so I think it's a really a great discussion that we really have to take. To what is it all about? Is it about, because as a research perspective, I would say, oh, I want to have the data, so in a way, I don't care where it comes from. But I think for as a community and involvement of people, it's really important that we say we want to put it here and it's safe, and not that it's safe when it's been done, but you know how you engage people. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Comment, because in Greenland we find a couple of very severe genetical diseases, which means that all pregnant women now are recognized if they have this gene for these diseases, and that is a good explanation to people to tell about some of the benefit due to do that kind of research.
Okay, one last question.
Thank you very much for very interesting presentations. So I was intrigued by the Faroe project, partly because of the previous history in Iceland with similar issues. And I remember back when there were plans for building well, actually a very different and larger database there that would actually not be opted into. So there was supposed to be that you were in unless you opted out, and this included all your medical records and so on. So this was a much more extreme kind of plan. And at that time, so therefore it was just inherently much more controversial than the FARGEN project now. But at that time, I still remember, even though there were so many reasons to be skeptical and critical and ask all kinds of questions before this would continue, 20 years ago or so, there was an enormous communal pressure to conform and participate there. And when you told the story about running into this man in the grocery store, and he felt like he had to excuse that he hadn't actually signed in, this struck a chord with me, because I remember that people felt like they were somehow obligated to participate, or at least not to make a fuss about it. So it seemed like people were being appealed to as moral people who would not be free riders. Dissent means that you are not chipping in, you are not helping us, because this is such a huge opportunity for the development and everything else, both economically and in terms of getting back all these well-educated people, so all these jobs, and so all these kinds of, how can you be against all those things with some just minute details about privacy and informed consent? So there was some public critical discussion of the pros and cons, and the quality of that was sort of up and uneven, and there was not enough of it, in my opinion, but at least it was absolutely necessary to have some kind of basis as a distance. So I wonder, although Iceland is a tiny community, Faroe Islands is even smaller, I wonder if this is a problem here, that people feel like they don't really have the freedom not to be part of this, which would then be contrary to traditional research ethics, where you have the freedom not to be not to participate, and you don't have to explain that option.
Also a good question. I don't think people feel obliged that they have to participate, and we also see that when we go out and have some commercial about the project, we see that people are trying to, they sign up. So in a way, if we just go out and use a lot of money for commercials, I think people will just join. And what we voluntarily, and it is I think also the story of FARGEN has in the beginning there was more like maybe you should go for the samples in the biobank, and a discussion back and forward, and how many people should be included. So I think that's one of the reasons the FARGEN didn't start off then in 2010, I think, when it started. So we had really struggles, and that's why we have actually done it like this, for people to have to opt in, and also that it's really based on scientific values, not on why you should. For example, now we did this commercial about this father who was walking around with his child, and he said, I'm part of FARGEN because it doesn't really help me now, but I know it will help my son in the future. And when we wanted to get permission to do that out to the people, we were stopped by the scientific ethical board, because now we were playing on people's emotion about you should participate, otherwise you're not helping the future. So I think we were really cautious about not giving people the impression that they have to participate, and make it really clear when we go out having meetings that this is for research purpose and totally voluntarily, and yeah. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay, I'm sorry, time is running, and I know that the coffee break is at least as important as the sessions. So thank you very much for this. We will have more time for questions during the panel session.